Welcome back to La Pausa, the Pints and Punditry podcast here at the Pitchside Pub. This is episode 7, coming to you on February 12th. It is Monday morning, and we have a big weekend to discuss. You know, we don't get into breaking down every game that often here on the podcast, but we had some matchups this weekend that really the results of these games are going to dictate where some of these leagues go for the rest of the season. And we got some direction, and we saw sort of what our storylines are going to be for the rest of the season, including one league that might be over and another one that's close to it. So before we get into that, I want to make sure you hit the subscribe button if you're watching on YouTube. Hit that button down below. If you're listening on Spotify, make sure you follow the podcast so you know when it comes out every Monday and Thursday. Get in that comment section. Would love to know what you want to hear us talk about, what you think about these races in particular today, because we got a lot of cool stuff to talk about. And then, of course, follow us on Twitter at Pitchside Pub. So we had matchups between first and second place teams in a couple of different leagues, starting with La Liga. We had Girona, who have been, sort of the incredible story, right? The incredible story of the football world is Girona, who were just promoted recently after having been in La Liga 2 and the second division, the Segunda division, and they are. They're hanging. They're hanging with Real Madrid, or at least they were until Saturday. So they were leading the La Liga for a while, and Real Madrid has overtaken them. And you can sort of see the shine coming off of Girona, and the clock striking midnight a little bit. But they're playing good ball. They've got a good manager, and they're not gonna go away. And even after this weekend, when they got thrashed, for lack of a better term. They got thrashed by Real Madrid. And it's unfortunate to see, unless you are a Real Madrid fan, Girona is probably one of those clubs that a lot of people are rooting for because, me personally, I love any time, we get somebody throws a stick of dynamite in the fire, right? And in La Liga, it's always Real Madrid and Barcelona with the occasional Atletico Madrid, throwing a little curveball in there, and they're usually in the mix, and they are again this year. But to see a club like Girona come in and everybody go, where did these guys come from? I love that. It goes back to the Leicester title in 2016 in the Premier League, where everybody just goes, where did this come from out of left field? And so you have to be rooting for Girona, even if you don't like the fact that they're partially owned by Man City and the City Football Group and all that sort of stuff. It's not like they're buying their way to it. They're developing these players, so get off your high horse about that. But you have to think a lot of people have been rooting for Girona if they're not Real Madrid fans. But it was evident on Saturday that they were just completely outmatched by Real Madrid. And that's not shocking. We know Real Madrid is one of the best clubs in the world right now, but you were sort of hoping there'd be more of a fight, right? Even if you're a Real Madrid fan, you were probably hoping it'd be a little more of a challenge, because at this point, winning La Liga does not appear like it's going to be that much of a challenge for Real Madrid. They are now 5 points clear of Girona, 10 points clear of Barcelona, and outside of a game against Barcelona left on the schedule, they don't have any stumbling blocks left. Unless they defeat themselves, there is absolutely nothing standing between them and a La Liga title at this point. They have one tough matchup against Barcelona, and even that, they are clearly on a different level than Barcelona is right now, who is their own mess. But there's nothing stopping Real Madrid. So this might have done it for La Liga, and that's a shame because we're sitting here in February and you can sort of see the writing on the wall that league is done. But it was sort of inevitable. Girona was not going to be able to keep up with Real Madrid for too much longer. The key for Girona now is finishing in that top 4 spot for a couple of reasons. One, obviously getting into the Champions League would be a tremendous success. And if you talk to Girona before the season, they'd go, yeah, sign us up for 4th. That's fine. They'd be perfectly happy with that. I also want to see to go back to talking about people throwing a stick of dynamite, in the water and just making a mess of things. I want to see what happens if Girona and City are both, if they both qualify for the Champions League. It's pretty evident that I am a City fan, but I don't necessarily think that the ownership group model should be completely unrelegated. It's not that I think it should be illegal, but there needs to be stipulations for it, and UEFA needs to get a hold of this because without any stipulations, frankly, it's genius, right? And you can hate Man City all you want, but it's genius. It's brilliant what they're doing, and it's well within the rules. And so it'd sort of be stupid not to, particularly when they have that level of money. But I don't know that they should be allowed to do it the way they're doing it. Again, not illegal, but I don't know that they should be allowed to. And I do think it would be a problem if both clubs are in the Champions League competing against one another. So I think that needs to be policed, and I think Girona making the Champions League next year will force UEFA's hand in putting some guardrails up for the multi-club ownership group. And I think those are long overdue. And at some point I'll probably make a video about that, going into a lot more detail. But I got to get my own thoughts in order on that because it's complicated. It's very complicated. But anything that forces UEFA's hand is good in my book. And so I want to see Girona make the Champions League just for that. Not to mention it's a huge financial windfall for them, and hopefully they reinvest that in their own team and continue to be another player in La Liga, which very much needs it because La Liga is a two-horse race historically and has been for at least the past decade, if not longer. But really just the two of them the past decade, with the exception of the Atletico Madrid title a couple years ago. But now one of those horses is falling off big time. Barcelona's a freaking mess, and they got no money, and they're losing their manager, and they're just not on the same level as Real Madrid, who at this point is one of the top two clubs in the world. It's them and Manchester City. Real Madrid have two of the 10 best players in the world, if not two of the 5 best players in the world, with Vinicius Jr. and Jude Bellingham, depending on where you put your rankings there. But they're both certainly top 10. There's no debate there. And only one other club in the world can say that. That's Manchester City, with Erling Haaland and Kevin De Bruyne as clearly top 10 in the world players. They are the only two clubs. It's in the club world, it's those two and everybody else. And so Real Madrid's going to run away with La Liga. So really it comes down to the Champions League for them. And, the Champions League restarts tomorrow, and I can't wait for that. That's going to be exciting. We're in the round of 16, and City and Madrid will almost certainly advance. And, I'm not one to ever claim, that the fix is in, or that when it comes to the draw and who the matchups are. And I don't believe any of that. I generally poo-poo and dismiss anyone who's claiming that there's a fix or that it's corrupt or that it's, But on the off chance it is, UEFA, do what you have to do to make sure Real Madrid and Man City don't draw each other early in this tournament. Because if they do, you're going to see the championship game in the semifinals, which has happened before. And that would be a shame because it clearly is those two teams. And so it would be really nice to see them in the finals. Of course, a lot of things have to happen. Nothing's a given. But those two teams are better than everybody else. And so I really hope they don't play early, because that feels like it is shaping up to be an epic Champions League final between Real Madrid and Manchester City. So we will see what happens there. But it does appear that for all intents and purposes, La Liga is over. It is going to be Real Madrid. Girona is a great story, and they'll hopefully still finish top 4. And at the moment, they may finish top 2. They may fend off Barcelona, who's an absolute mess, and that would really be something right there. But La Liga does appear to have been wrapped up this weekend. You may say the same thing about the Bundesliga. Now, it's not quite as over in Germany as it is in La Liga, but Bayer Leverkusen absolutely took it to Bayern Munich over the weekend, and Xabi Alonso straight up pants Thomas Tuchel. It wasn't even close. Unlike Girona's Cinderella story as the plucky upstarts, Bayer Leverkusen made sure the world knew what the rest of us already did, that they are legitimate contenders for the Bundesliga title. The interest in Xabi Alonso from other clubs is not just due to their record or a run of good form. They are a legitimately dominant team, and they took it to Bayern Munich, who is more talented than them position by position, but is not better than them as a full unit. That's the real testament to Alonso's coaching. This Bayer Leverkusen team is so much greater than the sum of their parts. I'm not one to bang the fire the manager drum, but it's clear that Thomas Tuchel's effectiveness as a Bayern manager is waning, if it ever existed at all. Known to burn hard and fast before wearing out his welcome, Tuchel's Munich squad lucked into their title last year as Dortmund collapsed around them. Then they've fallen flat on their face this season, despite the addition of Harry Kane. This Leverkusen team is simply better than them, but they shouldn't be. They're legitimately talented, and they're very real contenders, and Alonso has them playing even above that talent level. That, coupled with Bayern's underachieving ways, has opened the door wide open for a new Bundesliga champion. This was evident on Saturday. It was not even close. You look at the matchups, you look at the player-by-player sort of comparison. Bayern should be the better team, but they're not. They're not. Leverkusen didn't even have their top two strikers, in Schick and Victor Boniface. I mean, they were playing down, and yet the attack came from the wingbacks, who are really the key feature in Xabi Alonso's system, and that's why it would be something to see him at Liverpool with Trent Alexander-Arnold, who can stop trying to pretend to be a defender and really focus more on the attack there. But this was not close. This was not close, and I've been an anti-Thomas Tuchel guy for a long time, and when it comes to firing managers, I am always the one saying, no, you're firing him too quick. It's not enough leash. How's anybody ever supposed to develop players and make any traction and all that good stuff? Thomas Tuchel's never going to be that guy because he never stays anywhere more than a couple of years, which is why hiring him was a Band-Aid at best when they fired Julian Nagelsmann. And Tuchel's the positive side of Tuchel's usually comes in, lights a fire under everybody's ass, and gets a result. And that's what he did at Chelsea, and it got him a Champions League title. So I suppose it was worth it if you're okay with what has happened since. But that hasn't even really worked at Bayern. Yeah, they won last year, but they sort of backdoored their way into it, and this year's been an absolute mess. And they added some really good players in the offseason, and they're just not that good. Not the players. Harry Kane's having a great season, but the team is just not that good. They're not playing well. They are not anywhere close to the sum of their parts. And that is what tells you a manager is not doing a good job. And so this was an absolute pantsing of Thomas Tuchel by Xabi Alonso. He outcoached them. The team outplayed them. And it showed that they are not Girona. This is not a Girona situation. They are every bit the contender for the Bundesliga title right now that Bayern Munich is, and Bayern's going to need some help again. And I don't see Leverkusen giving it to them the way Dortmund did. This team is too well coached, so unless Chelsea does manage to get him to leave the club mid-season, I just don't see how that's going to happen. And so this league might be over as well. It's not nearly as much of a given as I think La Liga is, but this was a statement. This was a statement by Bayer Leverkusen to say we are not going to go away quietly, and this is not your league anymore, and we are here, and we are here to stay, at least as long as Xabi Alonso does. So through the end of the year, and then they'll figure it out. But a big statement by Bayer Leverkusen, and boy, they're fun to watch. They're a fun team to watch. The way they attack and run, and they're a lot of fun. They're a lot of fun. Jermaine Frimpong and Florian Wirtz and Granit Xhaka in the midfield's having a resurgence. They're just a good team. They're just a really good team, and they may have locked it up. They may have locked it up. So we'll see what happens there. What we know for sure is that we know nothing when it comes to the Premier League. The Premier League is officially a 3-team race with Arsenal's absolute curb stomping of West Ham 6-0 on Sunday. And it's not that those 3 points changed a lot, because because Man City won, and so they had to do that to keep up. That was the bare minimum. But the 6-0 goal deficit, in addition to just being a massive statement against a West Ham team that has been good this year but is starting to fade, and that was, tangent here, West Ham, wow, that was a bad performance. Oh my gosh, that was really terrible, really terrible. And but credit to Arsenal for stepping on the gas and staying there, because the 6-0 win changed everything when it comes to goal differential. They were, in addition to lagging behind City in points and needing those 3 points, they were behind them significantly in goal differential by, in fact, 6 goals. And so this retied them in the goal differential race, which, with the way this league is going this year, may be a very relevant factor very soon. We're going to see a point or two deficit here or separation between winner and second and maybe even third place in the Premier League this year. It is going to be neck and neck throughout the year, right up to the end. Arsenal has to play City again. Liverpool has to play City again. It's far from over. It's far from over. But by winning 6-0, it really bridged the tiebreaker gap. And so the second tiebreaker of the season ended today, and the reason that City is still in second place is that the second tiebreaker after goal differential is, of course, goals scored. And City is up 3 on them there, but they entered the day up 9. So this was a massive, massive win, almost worth an extra point. Not quite, doesn't work that way, but by shortening the gap in the tiebreakers, Arsenal really brought themselves back in the mix where they could end up with a better goal differential than City, especially if they blow out 1 or 2 more players. City really hasn't been doing that lately. Even their win against Everton over the weekend was 2-0. It was not exactly a definitive, decisive win. So anything can happen, but what we know is that the Premier League season is far from over. And anybody who's telling you about the inevitability of Manchester City's imminent title is discrediting just how deep this league is, and the fact that they've got to make a run in the Champions League as well, and the fact that they're still in the FA Cup, and is not giving credit where it's due for just how hard it is to win the Premier League, and also not giving enough credit to Liverpool, who, by the way, is still in first place. I don't know if anybody checked, as all these people that want to crown Manchester City as champions already, you guys know they're in second, right? Like, am I missing something? Liverpool's winning this league right now, and they're good, and they're also well coached, and Mo Salah's coming back, and so Liverpool is not going to go any more quietly into the night than Bayer Leverkusen is, and Arsenal's going to hang around too. And they are also well coached. For all of the Mikel Arteta detractors out there, don't listen. Don't listen to any of them. Anybody who's saying, they should go, fire Arteta and go get Xabi Alonso or anything like that. Don't listen to any of that. Mikel Arteta is a damn good coach, and you could and would end up doing a lot worse if you got rid of him. And if Arsenal ends up in third place by 3 points in this Premier League season, which is probably the deepest I've ever seen the Premier League, that's a darn good job as a manager. So be careful what you wish for. So these 3 teams are going down to the wire. They're not going anywhere, and Arsenal's just offensive unleashing on West Ham got them right back in the race, not just metaphorically, but mathematically. It's going to make a huge difference. So we saw matchups all over Europe. I think La Liga is done. The Bundesliga might be done, but it's one to still keep an eye on. And the Premier League is so far from being decided. It's amazing and it's incredible. And even though I want City to win, I'm glad it's a neck-and-neck race because I want to see competitive football from here all the way through the end of the season. What are your thoughts? What do you think? Is La Liga really done? Is the Bundesliga really done? Don't tell me the Premier League's done. I'm not going to listen to you. I'm going to immediately dismiss you if that's a thing you say. But I do want to get your thoughts. I want to get your comments down below. If you're watching on YouTube or if you're listening on Spotify, then leave us some comments on Twitter at PitchsidePub. Make sure you subscribe everywhere. Keep listening, keep following, and chime in. I want to get your thoughts as well. Thanks as always for joining us here at La Pausa, a Pints and Punditry podcast at the Pitchside Pub.